Welcome back to the Resilience Podcast. It's Brad here, joined by Dr. Sven.
Hi, guys.
And today we are talking about something really important and close to both of our hearts. It's been a challenging couple of years, 18 months to 2 years, and we've all been up and down the spiral multiple times, perhaps spending more time down the spiral than up the spiral. And as we edge towards the holiday season, we thought it's a great opportunity just to reiterate the importance of deliberately disconnecting, taking time to refresh and rejuvenate and prepare ourselves for whatever challenges might lie ahead. In the work that we do, we've been talking to lots of clients who have mentioned how stressed, how flat, how people are really struggling at the moment. And I've in fact run workshops specifically for teams who are in that kind of prolonged freeze state. They're really struggling. And we just wanted to provide some practical tips to help you through the festive season, to make the most of the break, and to perhaps even build some positive habits that will support you into the new year. Sven?
Yeah, so, when we raise this, and I think what you say it is dear to our hearts. And, if I can go back, a practical thing, which was a really great life lesson for me, when I was a young doctor and I'd had, a tough year and a bit building up in my practice. And I'd been working 7 days. I've been doing everyone's weekend shifts to make money and make headway. And we booked a holiday to Fiji. And I so needed that holiday. Mm-hmm. And one of my last patients had the most dreadful flu. And I arrived in paradise with all my toys, ready to have a wonderful break. And that night, first night, I came down on the most terrifying fever. And I spent the entire week, all my savings for the year in bed in Fiji, unable to do anything. And I kind of recovered on the morning of departure. So, the truth is that's 25 years ago. But it taught me a great lesson. Plan for your holidays.
Yes.
And as you say, this last 2 years have been extraordinary. And I think as we all understand and maybe not fully comprehend the depth of so far, I do think the way we've reacted to COVID, the impact of a global pandemic, it really has knocked people down. It is not a crisis. It's a very long, it's like going to war. Mm-hmm. And I am concerned personally that many people don't actually know how low they might be. Yeah. So I think, this key point of just be smart about your holidays in 2021. Don't take things for granted. And maybe we can talk about some of the assumptions we see some people taking, but be smart, be sensible, take good care of yourself, and make sure that you come back to work next year ready to tackle what could be another uncertain and difficult year. And the last thing you want to do, as many of us know, you crash into the end of the year, you're absolutely exhausted, you finish the last email, and you hit the terps with the family, and the first night together is a calamity. You fight. And then the whole Christmas period becomes a nightmare. Please, we don't want that, right? So let's be smart about our holidays. We should always do that, but let's also be sensible about these very unusual times and try and unpick what I think could make a difference to people.
Yes, absolutely. I think one thing to remember is we always talk about deliberate practice. If you want to get good at something, practice it often. You forget that we get quite good at picking up the phone constantly, first thing in the morning, what happened overnight. And those are some practices that over the holidays, you've got an opportunity to create some space, give yourself a break, rediscover what you enjoy.
Yeah. Really, really key. And, we mustn't forget that what you described there is a very carefully engineered addictive response. We reach for our favorite news apps and financial apps to get the dopamine of that first swipe. Mm-hmm. And the red or the green or the infection numbers. We're addicted. Yep. We are dangerously addicted. And it would be a great time to have a rest from it. Yeah. Get on the wagon.
Absolutely. So what are some assumptions that people should, be aware of? What are some assumptions that we should question?
So I gave this one some thought, Brad, and I'm exploring it. So feel free to push back on it. But I think that one thing: don't assume everyone is okay.
Yeah.
That's an error. Boards are now liable for mental health. We need to be tuned into the fact that some people will be in a bad place. So don't assume everyone's okay. And I guess in that, some people are actually doing just fine. And in fact, we've just been looking at our annual global data and seeing how people have trended over the last 2 years. There's actually been, over the last few months, a slight uptick in average resilience score. So some people are doing well, but not everyone. So I think that's the first thing, is know there may be some people who need your help. And I'm speaking, I guess, as a leadership team, when you look at how you might communicate something to your people. I think the second one that's really important is don't assume everyone's going to come back. We're already seeing organizations dealing with the consequence of some of their best and brightest simply checking out, deciding they don't need to work anymore, or they can run a consulting gig from home or go and live somewhere else. So your good people may leave. And this is what's been called the mass resignation, and it's affected millions of people worldwide.
Yeah.
And I think, the third assumption is don't assume your people will plan for a smart break. We won't. We're going to blunder into these holidays, and even a slight adjustment, a slight change in habit, as you describe, could make a massive difference. It's worth it for organizations to think about, how do we communicate this? And we say this a lot, but forget about bounce back. There is no going back to 2019. We are going to go into a new 2022. And I don't think it's going to be a magical recovery. I think there are going to be more risks. With that, more opportunities. So, in a nutshell there, you really want to just make sure that you don't assume everyone's tanks are full, that this holiday will just serve its purpose. I think we need to be more deliberate about thinking about, how do we fill a tank of our people before we get going next year.
Yeah.
And one of the questions around this, which is well articulated by a client of ours, was, they are sensing this, and they've been very deliberate with encouraging their people to start thinking about these consequences. And one of the things they've done, I think good on them, is they've extended their end of year break. So the business is closing definitively, and they're really encouraging people to go and have a proper holiday. Yeah. What are your sense, Brad? Any risks or gaps or false assumptions you think people might be making?
No, I think that's spot on. And I think a lot of companies will assume that, okay, 10 days off or 2 weeks off and everyone will come back recharged, but chances are they won't. And insisting, for example, that people avoid checking their emails over the holidays. That's really simple, but that's the kind of thing that could be modeled by leaders to say, hey guys, we're really serious about this. Unless it's an emergency and you'll receive a phone call, please disconnect. And we're doing it too. I think that's the key part, is that emotional contagion. We're looking forward to our holidays. We can't wait to disconnect, and we give you permission to do the same thing. And perhaps some structural tips day to day, as we'll discuss now, which companies might share with their teams.
Yeah, I think it's key. And as you said, if the leaders walk the talk and if they verbalize it, and I think, as we know, when a leadership team becomes engaged in the process of building resilience, whatever particular project you might be doing, the involvement of those leaders is so important to the success of the program.
Yeah.
This is not something where you say, look, run a workshop for the team. This is something you want to be involved with. You want to be present. You want to be fronting it as a leader. Yeah, really set a good example.
Exactly. And I think there's also that element. I was running the other day and I thought, what a lot of people will need to practice over these holidays is empathy, really. And in order to practice empathy, you need to be well rejuvenated. You need to have energy, all of the things we talk about. But to be able to understand why people are doing and saying the things they're doing, everyone responds differently to this prolonged kind of trauma. So people are going to be acting differently. You might see relatives who you haven't connected with for a while. They might have different ideas, beliefs, values, who knows? So being able to open that empathy portal and really try and understand.
Yeah, I was involved in an interesting conversation yesterday just around, you consider two young professionals, there's not just your story too, with young kids, and you've been in and out of lockdown, self kind of teaching and supporting the kids and trying to run your business from a corner and, balancing the duties of the home. Wow. You just wonder, how some of those people might be feeling. And it's so right. I think part of the drama of our world is this polarization. At the end of the day, it's a failure of empathy. Yep. So I think key message there, Brad, we need to come to this with a big heart. We need to understand people have very many different contexts. And I guess in a way, every organization is different too, isn't it?
Yeah.
It depends what industry you're in. Some people have flourished through this time. Some have had an absolute disaster of a time. Some are hanging on for dear life. So there are many different contexts. And, we just need to be sensible that any advice we give does need to be taken as very general.
Yes, for sure. So what are some practical tips and recommendations that we have for people?
So I'm thinking along two streams. I mean, one I think is necessary to talk about and at least put up there, because many of our audience are leaders or part of leadership teams. And I think, everyone is a member of a team. So, here are some things I'm kind of thinking through. I think this is something that really does need to have the involvement of the CEO, possibly even the board.
Yeah.
I think a board and a CEO who are not asking the question, how are my people doing, is making a very dangerous error. And I mean, it's your empathy story, isn't it? You actually, even though you're a harried CEO, you've survived 2021, you've got to open your heart and think, how's the rest of the crew doing, who maybe don't have the resources I have as CEO. And part of that, knowing the state of your leaders, I think you've got to start being tough about insisting on holidays. HSBC has just decided to give a free week, an extra 5th week, to anyone who takes 4 weeks off.
Wow.
Now, this is a big global bank, right? These guys think very carefully about what they do. And they've obviously calculated the numbers. Now, lots of people have banked heaps of leave. That is dreadfully expensive for the organization. But it also means that people have not been filling their tanks, which means over 2 years, those tanks are emptier and emptier. So that'd be my first one. This is top of the organization down. And I think take your holidays. 2, because every organization is so unique and the industry and context is unique, I think this is a great opportunity for every people leader to get involved in the conversation, to actually open that empathy portal and start thinking about their teams. What do they need? And what does a smart break look for, like for Brad versus for Sven or someone else? Just the fact that every people leader makes sure they have a moment with each person just to help that person consider what a smart break might mean for them. I think you mentioned this point, and maybe some in some couples who've been locked in a home together. Was you mentioned this?
I'm not sure.
Maybe you need a holiday from your spouse.
Well, this is.
I hate to say it, you've been stuck for ages. I mean, I had an imposed break of 5 months because Sue got locked down in New Zealand, but sometimes that may be good. So what I'm saying, people leaders need to get involved and I think have this conversation.
Yes.
Really, the third one is urge, incentivize, do whatever you need so people take good holidays. Don't just expect it because they won't. I think, those organizations, and you were mentioning it earlier, who are doing things, offering some resources to people, they're getting massive gratitude back.
Oh, absolutely.
So it's late in the year now, right? But I think to if you have laid some foundations so people know some basics, it's a great thing. I would say number 5, close the office. Like this client mentioned, close it for a slightly longer time. Make it deliberate so people know, gosh, okay, I'm off. I've got at least a week, maybe 10 days, maybe even 3 weeks, maybe as HSBC, you're going for 4 weeks. Wow. Yeah. This is really smart, right? You're going to have a lot of people coming back with a full tank.
Exactly.
As long as they are smart, of course. I think, number 6 for me is just to re-emphasize, and I mean, we get boring, but, the critical role of sleep. So many people have lost their sleep cycles and become disrupted over COVID. The importance of staying physically fit, from an evidence-based point of view, there's nothing that's going to have more benefits for you. Get fit, get out there, do your 30 minutes every single day. Deep relaxation. We were chatting recently about what Sam Harris has done in his meditation app. Wonderful. Maybe this is a good time to try that. And as we've also spoken in a previous podcast, the importance of nature. Get out in nature. I think another one is there are far too many people who have given up on their holiday plans. Oh, it's just too hard. I don't want to go through vaccination. I don't want to go through the border. I don't want to be tested. So they're just staying at home. Mistake. As you do many years, you just pack up with a tent and you go camping. Fantastic. There's no better way to be real.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
So simple and so powerful. But you get away from that home where you wake up and you go to the John Hopkins site and then you check CNN and then it's like insanity, and I'm guilty. I think, as part of your empathy one, for those of us who've worked hard and struggled over the last couple of years, you've had to put your attention on the business, on looking after your people. Sometimes we maybe have not had the time to think about our loved ones at home.
Yeah.
This is a really important part of planning for a smart break, is to think about what do we all need. Because, Christmas hits hard and fast. And you want to be sure that you're ready to have a great time together. Something I learned after that time I got sick is to take off early in December. More or less, right? So at least there's a little bit of a mellowing period to reconnect, have some fun. And then you really can have a good break and a good recovery after Christmas, and you don't have to feel guilty about enjoying yourself, because that's important too. I think given we're also locked down, any novelty, any travel that you can do, whether it's a camping trip or a climbing trip, anything creative, do something different. I really would urge people to shake it up a little bit. And I think the last part for anyone who's a team member is just to articulate somewhere before you close the year, the expectation that we're going to come back in a good state. It's been a rough time. We don't know what's going to happen in 22. There are going to be lots of great opportunities. There may also be some risks. Let's be fit for purpose. All right. And I'm really hoping, Brad, that you take that time and that you come back super fit for purpose, so that you can find flow and meet your goals through the work you do.
Exactly.
So those will be the main ones. And I know they are a little bit top down, but I think, wow, leadership's important now. And remember that leadership is not just the CEO and the board. It's every team leader. It's every member of a team. It's every member of a family. We are all leading. And at the end of the day, this is also leadership of self.
It is.
There are parts of you that want to rush off on those various addictive trips that we're all guilty of. It's a good thing to sometimes govern yourself. Say no to some things and yes to some other things.
And how quickly you notice the results. That's the fun part of the journey. If you just do the basics.
Absolutely. It is extraordinary how we don't. Dan Lieberman's recent book called Exercise, and he's a Harvard professor.
I saw that.
Who focuses on exercise and anthropology. It just makes a point. There is no more magical, wonderful, research-based solution for our lives.
Yes.
It touches everything: individual, family, business, community, nation state, planet, ecosystem. And yet, barely 25% of people get enough to accrue the benefits. The other 75%, walk away.
Yeah, it's sad when you consider the joy you can get from it as well, especially if coupled with a little bit of time in nature early in the morning, for example. Yeah, there you go, right? You set yourself up for a great day. Yeah. So some practical tips. We've talked about this before, but I think we said I really liked the fact that you mentioned be creative. Design some experiences and allocate time, because we have all become habituated to our technology. And I feel for a lot of kids who have been homeschooling and they have been on devices all year. And for them, it's going to be even more difficult to unravel that. To go and spend
and that's where
time
the
with
camping
mommy.
solution is seriously not stupid. It would be a gift to young people.
Yes, exactly. Rediscover just running around, meeting kids. You see them riding around on their bicycles and so forth. And it sounds perhaps a little traditional or, old school, but it's a fun way. And the camp toilets get terrible and all the rest of it, but that's part of the experience. Just get away, unplug, and don't get a powered site, get an unpowered site. So you can't even charge your gear.
And, if you want to talk about creativity, it makes you creative, doesn't it?
Oh, it does, 100%.
I had a simple little thing this morning. I've been fretting about this for months. I want to do some work on the truck. And today I took it to the garage. I got such a fright at the quality of the garage. I left, bought the tools and did the job myself.
Did you?
I had to go and look up the videos, but it was creative.
It's fun.
The satisfaction, of a job well done. That was a little bit mechanical. Had to borrow some stuff, get some help.
Yeah.
Hack it, be creative.
Yes.
And it can do it easily. But for me, it was a creative act.
I think for those of our audience who are in the Northern Hemisphere, obviously slightly different, there are still creative projects that you can plan for over the holidays.
Indeed. And things like photography and painting and, there's no doubt there's plenty to do.
Great. Yeah. So any other top tips? I've got two. Any from your side?
No, let's hear yours.
Okay. So I've been talking a little bit about tiny habits for a while, and this concept of breaking your habits down into their smallest component parts, even if it feels completely ridiculous, because sometimes we feel resistance to trying something new, especially if I haven't, I was talking to someone recently and she said, I wanted to start running again. So I set my alarm for 5 a.m. and I forced myself out of bed and it was horrible. And the next day I just hit the alarm and I snoozed it 3 or 4 times and then I didn't go. So this is what we want to try and avoid. So the tiny habits approach is create phases. What does level 1 look like? And that's just leaving your shoes next to the bed. Everyone can do that. What is level 2? It's actually putting them on and walking to the front door. But attach it to a habit that already sticks, that's something reliable. And then you eventually you're walking 5 kilometers a day and it's a non-negotiable habit. It sticks for life. That's what we want to encourage over the holidays.
And, it's the basic of all expert training, isn't it? You don't learn to hit a fantastic forehand in one shot. Mm-hmm. You have to break it down into all kinds of steps and fitnesses and pieces and slowly build it and then rebuild it and rebuild it and rebuild it until you're no longer thinking about hitting that ball.
That's right. Yeah.
So I think it's very wise because, I think it's doubly relevant, Brad, when people's tanks are a bit empty.
Yes.
Because, if you're feeling a bit flat and just like the person you described, you set a goal and then you fail, you feel even worse.
Yeah.
Sucks your tank even further empty. So part of that tiny habits, I think, is they must be achievable, and have a sense, okay, well, at least I did the stretch. I put my shoes on,
Exactly. Small wins. Make your bed. Those types of small wins.
100%.
That give
what
you
a great video, by the way, that Make Your Bed by the Navy SEAL.
It's great.
General. Brilliant. Yeah. Simple, practical, exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. So that was my first recommendation, and perhaps introducing one tiny habit per day over the holidays. By the end, if nothing else, you've done maybe half an hour of positive activities. It's going to have an impact, right? But I'm sure that people will find things that they unexpectedly enjoy and want to repeat. And the other one was just back to the technology, and it's finding ways to disconnect and not defaulting to that feed in every spare moment, because if we're left to our own devices, we will grab them. We'll pull them up and they'll fill our space, and the holidays will be over before you know it. So
truth is, I think I'm not bad at that, but that's the one that frightens me the most.
Yeah, that's it. It's and I do it as well, and that's how I know it's so addictive, because I try and analyze what I'm doing over the course of each day, and I find myself on that feed again, scrolling. It's scary.
Yeah, 100%. And having said that, I think this is where balance is so important. We've been, or had to be, being separated for 5 months, but even now with Sue back, we are taking time to have calls on Teams or Zoom or WhatsApp. I mean, yeah, they are wonderful tools, right? Use them for things like that, to connect with family and friends.
Yeah. And you can train the algorithm to make your feeds a little more boring by searching for boring stuff. It's quite an interesting technique. So someone just searched cat videos on all of their social media platforms, and it just showed them cats, and it became a whole lot less addictive. So there you go.
Oh, interesting.
And one of the other things you can do, which I was talking to you about before, is install some software, a blocker. So I've installed a blocker that blocks me. After 15 minutes of news consumption, it says, shouldn't you be working? and that's it. You're out for the day. And it's great.
I think I mean, not all of us will master those tools maybe quite so easily, but that makes a lot of sense.
Yes. I found a hack. I found a way around it, but still, most people wouldn't find that hack.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So, I just as you're talking about, I think another one that's important is schedule some time. I think every day. I mean, this is more of a bigger habit than a micro habit, but the idea of doing something you love. You may be writing something or painting something or fixing something, a hobby you love, playing a game with your child. I would schedule something that's high value, something that engages you in the flow concept.
Yep.
Otherwise, the day can just slide away as well. And I think, something where you think, man, we did a puzzle last weekend, one of those 1,000-piece puzzles. And I looked at that, why would I bother? But my gosh, did we have good time together doing that? Lovely, forgot about the wine, forgot about the coffee, and we just chatted and played puzzles. So I think that flow idea during holidays, it's important. And it's another way to maybe push out some of the less useful things. And maybe a last thought that came in, and maybe you can add it to those tiny habits idea, is I think there's never been a better year for a good New Year's resolution. Go away, have a great Christmas, have fun, take care of the people you love. If you need to drink too much, eat too much, have a great time, celebrate. But have a New Year's plan that is building those little micro habits that work for you. And it's a great year to really work on a good, smart New Year's plan. At the end of the day, that's what we're here for today. Absolutely.
No, I really like that. I think that creating some space and those shared experiences, and don't beat yourself up too much if things do go wrong, because they will.
Indeed.
Just be playful and curious, but do be deliberate, because if we're not deliberate, time disappears.
Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent. Anything else before we
have a great break?
Yeah, likewise.
I was thinking as we were preparing for this, I couldn't think of a more important message to share with our whole team.
Yeah.
I know many of them have had a difficult time. People in the UK who haven't worked live with a human being in 2 years. I mean, wow.
Yeah.
What kind of holiday does that require? So it's such an important idea. And, the more every person who hears this, who thinks about it, can communicate it with those they care about, It's a good act of compassion and benevolence.
Absolutely. So thank you, Dr. Sven. Thank you to
As
everyone
always.
who connects to this podcast. Wishing you the best for the holiday season, and whatever you do, make some space for yourself and for those you care about.
A great 2022.
Exactly. Till next time.
Thanks, Brad.